Hi, I'm the plant propagator and welcome to my channel and my garden. First of all, I want to kind of let you know what propagation is and what a propagator does. So propagation is just the multiplication of plants, the generation of large numbers of plants, whether through cuttings or seeds or micro cuttings or anything along these lines. So I do have a lot of experience with propagation. What I want to do on my channel is show you the different type of propagation methods that can be used through cuttings and through seed and through micropropagation or tissue culture. Today I want to start off with something pretty easy, and I want to go over just cuttings of impatiens or sun patiens. So impatiens are really nice plants. They're sun-loving. They can tolerate some shade as well. Really nice colors. And these are plants that are growing in my front garden. Right now I'm in the backyard, so I'm going to be doing propagation of these plants in the backyard in my propagation area. So you take cuttings from these plants, and usually when you try to take cuttings, try not to destroy the plants too much. I'm going to show you small scale how to take a few cuttings and root them and make more plants, and all you need to do is scale up, is just do more of this. So take the cuttings, try not to mangle or destroy the plants, one cutting or a couple of cuttings for the plants, and what you need to do is take cuttings that are fairly small, so about this large, and this one has a flower on it, and this is actually a fairly large cutting from a large plant. The first thing that you do is don't try to stress the plants too much, because they will be stressed just by cutting them like this. So you don't want to stress them out too much. Leave them with a root exposed. I cut these and place them in water here so that they don't get too stressed out. The other thing is that what you got to remember is all these leaves, when you're making these cuttings and when this plant is exposed like this, these leaves will cause evaporation or transpiration of water from this tissue. So as we prepare this to form a new plant for propagation, we have to get rid of these leaves. So what we need to do is take off all of these leaves, and what it does is it creates kind of a less of an area for the water to evaporate and stressing the plant. And although this flower is really nice, it's gone. It's out of here. The other thing is there's another flower bud on this right here, and this flower bud is also going to get removed. So this flower bud is getting taken off, and what I usually like to do is leave around 2 or 3 leaves on this plant. Some people actually cut off the meristem, the growing point of the plant. I usually don't do that. You don't need to do that with this plant. So this cutting, as right here, it's ready to go. It's just got it's got 4 leaves on it, so we're going to cut another one off. So we got 3 leaves here. I'd like to sometimes just take another extra cutting of this plant and just kind of cut it off a little bit. The next thing that I do here is I dip it in water, make sure the base of the stem is wet, and then I like to use a rooting powder. So this is a rooting powder that actually isn't, it's a rooting powder that it's hard to find anymore. This is Miracle Grow. What you can find in most places is a garden safe take root is what this is called. But this is a rooting powder, and this contains, it's a synthetic hormone growth regulator, and this one contains, I think, IBA, which is indobutyric acid. And what this hormone powder does is it causes the root initials to form, and then those root initials can grow. So we take this cutting, we dip it in the rooting powder, and there's a little extra on here, so we shake the extra rooting powder off. I should mention that I've had this for many years, and I still have a lot of this stuff left. So you don't need much. And in reality of this is that you may not need any rooting powder at all, so you can try it without it. Here's a pot that has my soil in it, and I also should mention that the soil is this, which is Moisture Control potting mix. And this is good stuff. So moisture control means that it has compounds in there and chemicals in there and components in there that prevent drying out. So these materials absorb the water and then they release it gradually. This is good stuff, and I strongly recommend this stuff. Number one, because it doesn't dry out that readily, and number two, because it tends not to get too wet or too dry. And if it gets too wet, then you get moldy, and then your materials, your cuttings will rot. So what you do is you take this material, you water it a little bit at the start. So we're going to add water to this. I already moistened this ahead of time, but it's pretty wet right now, but that's fine. You can take a screwdriver or a pencil or just a dowel and put a hole in here that's large enough for the cutting, and then just place the cutting in the hole like this, and then push the soil around it. That's all really there is to it. I've got a couple more of these that I want to do. I decided, and so we'll go through this again. And this is hard to do, but you got to do this. You got to rip off the leaves. So again, this is a good size cutting right here. I'm going to dip it in the rooting powder, tap it off, and then I'm going to make a couple more holes. This time I have 3 total cuttings that I want to use. And these are 3 cuttings from 3 different plants. Place it down in here, push the soil around the cutting, and I'm going to do one more. Sorry, I know it's a little boring, but just so you can see how it's done. This has a couple of flowers on it that, again, those get pulled off. And you can see not much left here. And I'm going to cut this back a little bit as well. Okay, so the rooting powder again, and put it in our last hole, firm it around. Alright, so what we have now is 3 cuttings in this container. You can make much larger containers, so you can generate, if you want, hundreds of these things. I have some containers back here that are just filled with different plants. These are actually orchids that I grow. But you can fill these things with plants. Right now, I don't know whether you can. It's really warm and really humid here today, so these plants really don't need to be covered. Again, these plants are very sensitive to the humidity. They'll dry out if it's dry, or if you do this inside your house. But if it's the winter time, and if you do that, it's best to put a bag over the top of the container, and to create a little mini greenhouse right here. And the high humidity is really nice because, again, these plants are very sensitive to drying out. Here, you just don't need to do this at all. And if you do something like this, if you put a bag on top, don't put it in the sun. Don't even put it in a sunny window, because it's going to cook it. So just be very careful when you do this. When you have containers, plastic containers like this, all you need to do is just put a cover on top of the container. Just invert a container like this, a salad container, invert it over the top of this. Okay, so this is ready to go. This is propagated. I want to show you some plants. So these I did yesterday, and what I want you to see here is there's not much roots, there's not much going on, but the plants are pretty turgid. So it's not wilting, and this is kind of what you want. Is these plants? I haven't watered them today, I haven't done anything with them, but if you just let them sit, they'll do just fine, and they're going to do really, really well. Again, with the humidity and the heat that we have at our location here, they'll do just fine. I want to show you what happens after time. So after time, with something like this, like this, you'll get this. So these are a couple of plants that I rooted, a couple of cuttings that I rooted, and you can see there's pretty vigorous growth here. And let's get these out so I can show you that there are pretty good roots on this guy. So this thing is loaded. So this was a successful operation. These are going to get planted out in my garden pretty soon. And again, scale up, do what you need to do, and that's really simply how you do this. Over time, what I'm going to show you is how to root different types of cuttings of different plants. Again, these are sun patience. I'll show you how to root a variety of different types of plants. I will show you how to grow plants from seed. Not too tough, but again, there's some tricks to doing this depending on the kind of plant. And then I'll show you how to propagate these guys, which are my babies, which are my orchids. And I'll take you in the laboratory and show you some of the techniques that are used in the laboratory to propagate and germinate orchids from seed. So that's all I have. Happy propagating. See ya.